Thank you for the kind introduction. Thank you for the kind introduction. I think it's very complimentary. I'm here today to speak about. No, I prefer. Can you hear me well? Okay. So as I've been briefed, I am one of the founders of the Obrela Corporation. The Obrela Corporation is a very specialized organization that protects high-profile clients and enterprises around the world from cyber threats. And we do that engaging a very sophisticated technology stack, analyzing an immense amount of data that includes transactions, user activity, system activity, whatever actually makes sense for us in order to identify, detect, and respond to cyber threats on a real-time basis. We do have presence in a lot of places around the world. And the mission statement of the Obrela Corporation is to keep your business in business. We do that for a number of organizations all over Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Now, having said that, I think it's not the most important thing of my speech. I wanted to speak to you about a little bit about myself, and maybe that would be an introduction. I started my career in 1993 as an engineer in the University College of London. And then in 1993, I took the decision to have a master's degree in information security management. And I found myself in 1994 having a master's degree in information security management. Literally nobody understood what that was about in 1994. It was more like a science fiction rather than a science fact. Imagine that in 1994, there was no internet around. Nothing was, looking like it is today. I am very fast recruited by Citigroup. Citibank was the first commercial institution at the time that invested in information security. And the reason was that it was the first victim of a cyber attack. And they were losing millions. And that actually shocked the management. And for the first time, they hired a team of experts around the world in order to put together an information security policy and deploy that information security policy on a global scale. And I was fortunate enough to be part of that team. And my boss, Steve Katz, who is not any longer with us, he passed away a few months ago, who was literally the first chief information security officer of the business. So my boss, Steve Katz, and at that time, we were actually the first who defined what CISO is about. Now, fast forward today, after almost 2 decades, I think things have literally transformed our society. Things now are not just different. I think they're substantially shaping our future. Technology today is an indispensable part of our lives. We cannot live without technology. Most of the things that you actually use on a daily basis do not work without technology or communications. But I'm going to give you a different perspective today. And I think technology is not a tool anymore. It's not just a box. It's not just a part of our life. It's not just an extension of our human body. It's something different. I think we are now experiencing the creation and the expansion of cyberspace. And cyberspace is a new domain. Like when the humankind discovered the Americas, when we discovered the air, when we discovered the seas, now all the space, now it's cyberspace. It's a new domain. And that domain actually holds most of the value of today's humankind. That domain today has billions of users, billions of devices, immense amount of traffic, and zettabytes of data. But the most important thing is that the values that existed in our physical world have now moved to this cyberspace. Most of your property, most of your money, most of your assets actually are now digital numbers in that cyberspace, in that new domain. You, as a physical entity, exist in that new domain. You have your digital identity, and you are known with that digital identity. In very advanced countries, your digital identity is all you are. And the so-called digital identity theft is a very serious issue, because if someone steals your digital identity, it can literally destroy your life. I have examples of my friends that live in US that are security experts and have actually made, they have confronted cyber attackers. Okay, they had a fight with them. Literally, they tried to track them down, and the hackers actually hacked their digital identity. Their life was at stake, their family, their kids. It was so scary to see that. So that's a different perspective, because that now, and the reason for cybersecurity and how important it is exactly that. We are now protecting that domain, and cybersecurity is about protecting the domain. Now, the organizations have literally been investing to protect that domain year over year, and more and more. And I think if you can see the graph, you will see that this is the worldwide spending increasing year over year. And in the same time, cybercrime has been increasing, has been climbing. And that is also a fact. So you see two graphs that people are trying to spend, people invest to fight cybercrime, but cybercrime keeps climbing. The cost of cybercrime literally today, it's something like $10 trillion. To give you a perspective of how big number this is, it's bigger than the global drug trade. So it's a big business. So, and there is, of course, lack of capabilities. I'm not going to spend time on that. We're experiencing the perfect storm conditions. I'm sure this is not the right version you have here, but I will try to navigate. So just to save some time, my different line of thinking is that we are failing to address the problem. Because imagine that we're investing year over year more and more money, and cybercrime is keep rising. There's no response in our investments. So I'm actually challenging, and we are challenged as well as professionals. And the big question is, why are we failing? Because we know exactly what technology is. We know we have actually built the technology. We have perfect knowledge of what vulnerabilities we are actually constructing the same systems, and we have all the things in our capacity to solve the problem. So why this is an ongoing and increasingly bigger and bigger problem in the world? And before I get into that answer, I'm going to give you a small introduction about mathematics and the difference between complicated problems and complex problems. Complicated problems are problems that have a solution and have a predictable solution. So they may take ages to do. It may require a lot of resources to find the answer, but it is a predictable we can with a predictable way foresee the answer. Some of those problems may be, for example, putting a house together, or maybe having a manual and learning how to put our cars apart. It's a difficult task, but given the time and resources, we can put our car apart, and then we can put it back together. Complex problem is a different animal. Complex problems, the solution of a complex problem cannot be predicted. Similar systems, complex systems, are like the weather systems, financial systems. Those systems, no matter the knowledge that we have, no matter the computer capacity that we have, the processing power we have, and the statistics and the numbers, as even today, we cannot predict the weather. And you could say we are now, have superpower in terms of engineering, of computers and AI. Why not? How come we cannot solve the weather? We cannot solve the weather because it's a complex problem. And the same applies, of course, with the traffic. You can learn how to put together your car or put apart your car. But if I ask you how much time does it take for you to take the car from your house to reach your office, that's a complex problem. You don't have a finite answer. You can have a prediction, but there is an error that we cannot actually define. So that's the fundamental difference between complicated and complex. We cannot have a predictable answer for complex problems. So cybersecurity, all of those years, has been addressed, however, as a complicated problem. Everyone has been investing in more resources, in more technology, in more racks, in more networks, in more encryption. We were trying to build a fence, a perimeter. We were trying to avoid the unavoidable. And that's how we actually approach a complicated problem. But cybersecurity is a complex one. We cannot approach a complex problem with a complicated way. So I think this is a different approach, and it's clearly a complex problem because there are so many unknowns. And those, for example, parameters who define a complex problem like non-linearity, emergent properties, infinite loops, adaptation, evolution, everything that you can consider that defines a complex problem has its applicability in cybersecurity. To some extent, I would, and I've been using this example in many presentations. Cybersecurity is harder than going to Mars. Going to Mars is a complicated problem. Given the resources, given the technology, given the time, it's fairly, it's a fact that we will go to Mars at some point in the future. So, but cybersecurity is different. It's a complex problem. And someone could challenge me, and actually had a meeting, I had a conference in London a few years ago with the UK Space Agency Director of Flights. And we were actually challenging each other of what is more difficult and what is complex and what is complicated. And he actually admitted that we will go to Mars, and that's a complicated problem. And he also admitted that cybersecurity is a complex one. So I'm actually trying to say that it requires a different approach. I know that you guys have been trying very hard all of those years. I'm sure that nobody has actually reached the holy grail of having a fully secure system. And I think one of the assumptions that one has to take before engaging, and just to give you an understanding of why I think this is a complex problem, I will tell you that there is probability 1, which means certainty, that your systems, any system, no matter the security sophistication, the investments, the protections, and the measures that we take, will be compromised at least once in its lifetime. So that is probability 1. That defines complexity as well. So how do we fight complexity? Number 1, we need to forget about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. I studied in Royal Holloway in London in '94, and we were actually the first lecture was about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. 1994. This is not applicable anymore, my friends, because confidentiality, integrity, and availability have been instrumentally devised to solve different problems. Technology in 1994 was a system that it was between walls. There were no open systems. It was closed to a big extent. It was easy for us to apply confidentiality measures, integrity measures, and availability measures and say it's safe. And we actually put a box and said tick, tick, tick. That is not applicable anymore. Forget about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. This is not your goal. As security experts, as CEOs, as entrepreneurs, as executives, this is a very technical feature that is, randomly and very rarely used today. I think today, the 3 things that we are actually using and I think that's our philosophy as well as Obrela, are actually three things that replace confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And the ones that we actually use are visibility, readiness, and resilience. Those are the three things that you need to protect yourselves, because complexity requires visibility, requires readiness, and resilience. Why? Because you cannot predict. You do not know what is happening, what is coming. Okay, what you know is that it will happen. So you need to be able to know when it will happen. You will be ready. You need to be ready to respond fast, and then you should be able to recover and continue operations and continue your business. Those are the three things that you need to care about. And I'm going to speak briefly about visibility, because visibility is key. Visibility is about situational awareness. Visibility is about, knowing what is under your management. Number one, you cannot protect anything unless you know exactly what is at stake. Most of the organizations that we work with together today do not know what are the assets, what are they trying to protect, what is the value of what they're trying to protect. So situational awareness requires, number one, complete knowledge of what is at stake. Number two requires data. What is happening in my network? What is happening in my network? Who is accessing my network? Does it work? Is there anything that I need to know? Is anything not normal? You need to be able to understand when someone compromises your security in a millisecond. You don't have so much time. You need to know that it's compromised. And I think visibility is so important, because based on our statistics, for example, it takes more than 270 days to detect an attack. So statistically speaking, by the time that we have a hacking incident or a security compromise or a policy violation, by the time that we detect that and we start making or taking measures, on average, that is 270 days. And that statistic hasn't changed for the last 8 or 9 years. Of course, I may not be talking about you specifically, but that's average statistically. And that is why we need visibility. Responding in 270 days, it's already gone. Okay, just go pay ransomware, and say sorry. You don't have anything to do. Someone else has control of your systems. But if you are able to respond in an hour, maybe 2 hours, maybe 4 hours, that's completely different. Maybe your system is not completely compromised. Maybe you have time to negotiate. Maybe you have time to block. Maybe you have time to unlock. Maybe you have time to do something. So time is essential, and that's why we need visibility. We need to actually have in our screens our cyberspace. We need to see that. So that is key. And of course, one has to consider, and this is of course a big challenge, scale. Data can be huge. The fragmentation of the data, contextual understanding, putting risk context on top of that, very technical meanings. So I don't want to spend more of your time here. But number two is readiness. Readiness means exactly, when you see something, you need to be able to mobilize your resources against that. And readiness is about people and procedures. People must be mobilized, and they need to follow a process. It's not as simple as it sounds. When a team is on crisis, okay, when you do something business as usual, you sit down and have a coffee, everything works. And even if you don't have something documented, you will find a way. There's collective intelligence, how you do things. But when you are in crisis, when someone is actually, and especially when you're facing something new, having something in paper, having roles and responsibilities, having teams, having phone numbers, and be prepared for that is so important. So readiness is about time. How fast can we respond? how effective we are in responding. And it's, of course, complementary to visibility. Most of the times, of course, step number one for any business is to do a readiness assessment. Readiness assessment is, and I think it's a simulation of an attack, and then you can measure the time and how the team performs. And of course, key to that is orchestration, measurement, and continuous improvement. The drills that we have been doing for fires and the alarms that we've been all through together, those drills now have to be, also applied in cybersecurity. We are doing drills for floods and fires, but nobody's doing drills for cybersecurity attacks. You understand? This is a mindset shift, a difference in culture. And of course, here is the skill set is very challenging. I know it's very hard to find people. So training and the continuous awareness is very, very important, as well as the culture, of course. And of course, last but not least, I think resilience. And I think that picture is actually says it all. I mean, resilience is about getting better every time. Okay? It's good that we respond. It's good that we have faced that thing. It's good that we are actually continuously improving ourselves. And for me, resilience actually it's by definition a practice that says that no matter what, we must continue to operate. And that's irrelevant of how we actually prevent cyber attacks or how we detect cyber attacks. It's about continuity, about resilience, about continuing regardless of what is happening. And that's quite hard, actually. But I think we need to embed this resilience attribute to our quality philosophies, because resilience is about quality. And the quality has been a very well-known principle in technology, in the technology sector, but also in the product development. And I think when you produce products, you need to make sure that those products are good and can be sold and have no defects. And I think those quality principles, if applied to cybersecurity, that means that we can create systems, we can build cybersecurity systems, we can protect organizations with quality in mind, make sure that we do not have defects, or if we do have defects, we do detect them early and we replace the product. So the same principles that are applicable in quality management are also applicable in resilience. So resilience is also about quality. And it's also about standardizing the procedures, making repeatable things so that you can improve, continuous testing and assurance, process-based controls, and so on. And of course, continuous improvement. I think something that we need to consider in every, when we design a security system is that as any other system, security systems are not technology. It's not about technology. It's when we are speaking about a system, by definition, we actually involve people and procedures. Any system around the world is actually involving all of those things. And when you combine visibility, readiness, and resilience, you get a very big asset. You get something which is very valuable. You actually can measure the risk. And you can measure the risk on a real-time basis if you put this thing together. And that's your biggest weapon, your most important thing when you fight complexity. Because when you fight complexity and you do not know what's next, the only weapon that you have is to be able to evaluate the probabilities of the possible things to happen. And then based on that probability, you can apply your resources, your best effort to protect yourself from the worst case scenario. So this is about risk again. In real-time risk management has been something as a technology that has been very well known for many years in the defense industry. Most F-16s and the pilots, if you've seen a movie, when you have a pilot riding an F-16, and in a movie there is something that is beeping, there's a tick, 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 that is when the F-16 is under attack. That's a real-time risk management system that actually collects data from the flight, from the airplane, from the radars, from the weather system, from the weapons, and actually provides one single number to the pilot. So that is a real risk management system. And no matter how very well advanced we are and how much sophisticated and how much we invest in technology, we still don't have such a system in our industry. We cannot actually collect all of the data, aggregate the data, and use one system that actually can evaluate this on a real-time basis. This is exactly what we have been doing all of those 10 years, and I think this is the core of Obrela as we speak today. So I'm actually not going to spend more time on that, but when we speak about real-time risk management systems, we are essentially speaking about concepts like the ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning Systems. It's the same principles. The same principles that we use to manage our systems and manage our business are actually mandatory to manage our cybersecurity. So it's quite the same need, and the requirements are exactly the same. And closing, I would say that cyber risk management and cyber risk management in real time, I think it's something that can help a lot of different industries to work together to face the same problem. For example, cyber insurance. Cyber insurance is not working today as we speak. Why? Because cyber insurers cannot actually evaluate the risk. They will give you a checklist, and based on that checklist, they will do a gap analysis, and they will figure out, based on what others have responded, what's your exposure. But that's not really a meaningful way to evaluate risk. But when you have a system that can evaluate on a real-time basis what is your risk, then you can have actually the insurers to insure your business based on that risk. The more your risk, the higher the premium. The lower the risk, the lower the premium. And of course, in healthcare, when you have something that you need to do, you need to protect the system. If it's a healthcare system, if it's a life support system, if it's something that supports the hospital and it's critical, the risk is higher. So let's put your resources there, because you cannot protect everything. You cannot, close every door, but you can, put your most important staff, your most important resources to protect the most critical assets. So the more the power to anticipate and understand the larger the potential for prevention or containment. That's the bottom line. That is what I had to say. I hope that made sense, and I hope that I really helped in that very great conference, which is an impressive collection of very valuable presentations and very, how can I say, good personalities and engineers. So thank you again for your time today. And if there is any question that I could take, or you can actually find me later on. Thank you.